desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids, while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from
In the annals of American history, few families have captured the imagination quite like the Kennedys. Charisma, tragedy, and an enduring mythos of grace under fire. At the heart of it all stands Caroline Bouvier Kennedy, born into the whirlwind of power and privilege on November 27, 1957. She is the only surviving child of President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy. Today, at 67, she remains a quiet force. Author, attorney, diplomat, and guardian of a legacy that both elevates and haunts her. This is her story, a 30-minute journey through joy, loss, and quiet resolve. A life scripted not by destiny, but by the choices she made in its wake. Caroline entered the world just 3 years before her father's meteoric rise. John F. Kennedy, the dashing senator from Massachusetts, won the presidency in a razor-thin election against Richard Nixon. Overnight, the Kennedy clan became royalty in a democratic republic. Caroline, the first baby born to a president-elect in the television age, was thrust into a spotlight that would never dim. But in those early days, she was simply Button or Little One to her parents. A cherubic toddler with her mother's dark hair and her father's spark. A 3-year-old Caroline, played by a child actor, toddles through the Oval Office. JFK, portrayed with period-accurate charm, lifts her onto his desk, surrounded by maps and memos. Jackie enters with a tray of crayons. From 1961 to 1963, the White House was Caroline's playground. At age 3, she rode her Shetland pony, Macaroni, a gift from then Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, across the South Lawn, her laughter echoing off the colonnades. Dignitaries from around the world vied to charm her. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev sent a fluffy puppy named Pushinka. The King and Queen of Greece, a golden music box. Photographers captured her innocence amid the pomp, feeding goats in the basement zoo her mother had installed, or saluting Marine One helicopters with a tiny salute taught by her father. But beneath the fairy tale facade lay the pressures of Camelot. Jackie, ever the curator of image, orchestrated Caroline's world with meticulous care. Tutors came to the residence. Kindergarten was held in a converted solarium. Caroline was described by White House staff as a trifle remote and a bit shy, yet remarkably unspoiled, a child who once mistook the presidential seal for a big cookie. Her brother John Jr. arrived in 1960, just weeks after the election. The siblings formed an unbreakable bond, scampering through hidden passages and crashing state dinners with toy trucks. Yet it was her relationship with her father that defined Caroline's earliest memories, a bond of playful intimacy in a house of high stakes. John Kennedy was no absentee dad. Despite the Cuban Missile Crisis and civil rights battles, he carved out sacred time for his children. Mornings meant swimming lessons in the White House pool, where he'd toss Caroline into the water, her squeals of delight piercing the tension of his days. Weekends at their Virginia retreat, Glen Ora, brought horseback rides and sailboat races on the Potomac. One cherished anecdote. At age 4, Caroline confided in him about a schoolyard bully. JFK, ever the storyteller, regaled her with tales of his own Waitu heroism in the PT-109, turning fear into fortitude. Courage, he'd say, is being scared and doing it anyway. These moments weren't just paternal affection. They were lessons in resilience. Caroline later reflected in interviews that her father's humor, his penchant for puns and pirate voices, taught her to find light in darkness. He read her The Little Prince by lamplight, whispering, "What makes the desert beautiful is that somewhere it hides a well." In photos from August 1963, aboard the yacht Honey Fitz off Hyannis Port, a 5-year-old Caroline clings to him, wind in their hair. A snapshot of pure, unadulterated joy. Tragically, it would be one of their last. On a crisp autumn day in Dallas, the dream shattered. Caroline was 5 years and 11 months old when shots rang out in Dealey Plaza. Her father, 46, was gone, assassinated in an act that scarred the nation. The image of her and John Jr. saluting his flag-draped coffin became iconic, a symbol of stolen innocence. "We must go on," Jackie told her children that night, as they huddled in the White House, the halls suddenly echoing and empty. The aftermath was a blur of grief and relocation. Jackie, widowed at 34, fled the Goldfish Bowl of Washington for a penthouse at 1040 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Caroline and John attended elite schools. Rarely for her, private tutors to shield them from paparazzi. But loss compounded. Uncle Bobby Kennedy, who stepped in as surrogate father, showering her with affection and sailing trips, was slain in 1968. Mother Jackie battled cancer, passing in 1994. And brother John Jr., her confidant and co-guardian of the Kennedy flame, died in a 1999 plane crash off Martha's Vineyard. Through it all, Caroline's relationship with her father lingered like a guiding star. In her 2011 poetry anthology She Walks in Beauty, she curated verses on love and loss, echoing JFK's own profiles in courage. "He was my hero," she said in a rare 2013 interview. "Not because he was president, but because he made me feel safe to dream." That bond fueled her aversion to the spotlight. She shunned reality TV offers and political runs, once quipping, "I've had enough attention for 10 lifetimes," yet dream she did. Education became her anchor. From Concord Academy's leafy Massachusetts campus, Caroline graduated in 1975, then earned a B.A. in Fine Arts from Harvard's Radcliffe College in 1980, following in her mother's Vassar footsteps, but carving her own lane. Law called next, a JD from Columbia in 1988, top 10% of her class, New York Bar passed in 89. She interned at the State Department, but true passion bloomed in words. Her literary career launched with In Our Defense, 1991, a civil liberties tome co-authored with Ellen Alderman, a nod to her father's Bill of Rights fervor. Bestsellers followed, Editing Profiles in Courage for Our Time, 2002, Honoring Modern Heroes, A Family of Poems, 2005, for children, inspired by Jackie's bedtime readings. By 2011's She Walks in Beauty, she'd sold millions, blending feminism and family law. "Writing," she said, "is how I process the unprocessable." Professionally, she liaised at the Met, masterminding Don't Eat the Pictures, a Sesame Street special that drew 10 million viewers. In 2002, post 9/11, she directed NYC's Office of Strategic Partnerships, raising $65 million for schools on a symbolic $1 salary. Boards beckoned, Kennedy Library Foundation president, Shakespeare in the Park trustee. In 1989, she founded the Profile in Courage Award, first given to elderly congressmen who desegregated schools, a living tribute to JFK's ethos. Love arrived quietly. In 1986, at 28, she wed Edwin Schlossberg, a cerebral exhibit designer 7 years her senior, in a low-key ceremony at Our Lady of Victory in Centerville, Massachusetts. No name change, she remained Kennedy. 3 children followed: Rose, 1988, a documentary filmmaker; Tatiana, 1990, an environmental journalist now in California with her wife; and Jack, 1993, a Harvard law grad and NY mayoral candidate whisperer. They raised them on Manhattan's Upper East Side and weekends at Red Gate Farm, their Aquina, Massachusetts retreat, a 300-acre sanctuary of horses and hikes, echoing her White House pony days. Marriage whispers persist, tabloids murmur of separate lives since the 2010s, but Caroline guards her privacy fiercely. "Family is my North Star," she told Vanity Fair in 2019. "The rest is noise." Politics tugged, but not to elected office. A brief 2008 flirtation with Hillary Clinton's Senate seat fizzled. "I'm not cut out for it," she admitted. Instead, diplomacy. In 2013, Obama named her ambassador to Japan, the first woman in the role. At 55, she arrived in Tokyo amid US and China tensions, strengthening alliances. She visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki, meeting Hibakusha survivors. "Their stories remind us peace is fragile," she wrote. Trade deals flourished, student exchanges boomed. Japan honored her with the Grand Cordon of the Rising Sun in 2017. Biden called in 2022. Australia, amid AUKUS submarine pacts and Assange extradition drama. Sworn in July that year, she championed climate talks, cancer research, and indigenous rights. Swimming Kennedy waters off the Solomons in 2023, honoring JFK's PT-109 survival. She stepped down November 28, 2024, post-election neutral. Service isn't about one administration. But 2025 brought her back into the fray, not by choice, but conviction. On January 28, 2025, Caroline broke her self-imposed silence with a blistering letter to U.S. senators, circulated via video on social media. Her target, cousin Robert F. Kennedy Jr., nominated by President Trump for Health and Human Services Secretary. RFK Jr., once a family scion, had veered into conspiracy, vaccine skepticism, climate denial, election doubts. Caroline called him a predator, unqualified, dangerous, preying on public fears for personal gain. "This is not the Kennedy way," she wrote, invoking her father's science advocacy and Uncle Ted's health reforms. "To lead HHS requires trust in facts, not fiction." The missive, ahead of his confirmation hearings, ignited headlines. NYT dubbed it Camelot's Last Stand. CNN aired her poised delivery, eyes steely. Why now? Sources say family pleas fell on deaf ears. RFK Jr., his rise threatened the legacy she'd stewarded. "He's not my uncle's son anymore," a close aide confided.
People have asked for my thoughts about my cousin Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his presidential campaign.
The hearings dragged. RFK Jr. confirmed narrowly in February, but Caroline's stand reaffirmed her as Camelot's conscience. Horseback at Redgate Farm, board meeting at U.S.-Japan Foundation, family picnic with grandkids.
As of September 2025, Caroline resides primarily in New York City, that same Upper East Side enclave of her youth, with weekends at Redgate Farm, where she tends bees and writes. At 67, she's rejoined the U.S.-Japan Foundation Board, July 2025, fostering ties she forged as ambassador. No new books announced, but whispers of a memoir swirl, perhaps on poetry and presidents.
Desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids, while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from.
Her children thrive. Rose directs eco-docs. Tatiana pens for the Washington Post. Jack eyes politics, sans the curse. Grandchildren, 3 so far, bring unscripted joy. Edwin. Theirs remains a partnership of intellect, if not daily domesticity. Caroline Kennedy embodies her father's creed. Ask what you can do. She's done it all, without the crown. In a 2024 Paris Review interview, she mused, "Legacy isn't inherited, it's built, brick by quiet brick." As America grapples with division, her voice, rare, resolute, reminds us, grace endures.